Hello, my name is Carol, and I never dreamed I'd share this story. I was an everyday woman. Nothing remarkable, just raising 2 loud kids alone, working long retail shifts, dodging bills and scraping by each month. Life was noisy, tough, and always busy, but it was ours until September 2nd, 2023 came and changed it all. That's when I died for 8 minutes. No heartbeat, nothing pumping in my chest, and what I saw beyond this earthly life shattered every single thing I thought I understood about the world around me. I met Jesus right there in that stillness, and he revealed a deception so vast and tangled, especially about race, that it still grips my soul tight. I'm not here to preach at you or haunt your thoughts with fear. I'm here because he sent me back with a truth you can't ignore, too urgent to keep locked inside. The morning broke like any other day I'd faced in my 38 years. My phone alarm screeched at 6:15 a.m., sharp yanking me out of a shallow, restless sleep. A faint gray light slipped through my crooked blinds, brushing the edge of my worn quilt and the pile of laundry I hadn't tackled yet. I murmured a quick, "Thank you, God," under my breath, pulled on my faded teal scrubs and dragged myself downstairs to face the day. Coffee brewed in the pot, dark and strong, its sharp smell cutting through the morning haze as I sipped it slow, leaning against the chipped counter. I worked at Oak Haven Care Home, where I cared for elderly patients. That morning I'd check on Mrs. Ellis and Mr. Cole, my usual rounds. It was my usual grind, familiar a rhythm I knew by heart, with no hint of the wild turn that waited just hours away, ready to upend everything I thought I was ready for in this life. By late afternoon, I was worn thin from a full day at Oak Haven. My shift finally ended at 5:30 p.m., and every muscle in my body ached like I'd hauled bricks instead of helping folks with their meals and meds. My daughter Lily texted me at noon for nuggets, and I said yes, picturing her grin. I clocked out, grabbed my purse, and headed to my old gray sedan parked in the lot under a sky already turning dark with heavy clouds. Rain started as I pulled onto Pine Road, a light drizzle at first, then harder, smearing the windshield as I flipped on the wipers. I turned up the radio to hear Blessed Assurance over the patter humming along as I drove toward the store for those nuggets. The rain picked up pounding now, and I squinted through the blur. Then out of nowhere, headlights cut through the storm, harsh and bright, a delivery van skidding wild on the slick pavement, barreling straight at me. My heart slammed into my throat, and I jerked the wheel hard to the right tires, squealing against the wet road. But it was too late. Metal crashed loud and brutal glass shattered in a spray all around me. My chest slammed against the seatbelt, cutting off my breath, and then everything went black, no sound, no light, no fight left in me. Just a deep, sudden nothingness that swallowed me. That deep nothingness came without pain or fear. No sting from the glass, no ache from the seatbelt, just a sudden quiet, like a heavy blanket. One moment I was in the driver's seat, pinned by the wreckage of my sedan against that delivery van, and the next, I wasn't there anymore. I was above it all, looking down at the twisted mess of metal that used to be my car. Rain fell in slow, steady drops, each one catching the red and blue lights, flashing wild from the ambulance that had just pulled up beside the wreck. Paramedics rushed around below me. One of them, a young woman with short black hair, shouted, "Carol, can you hear me? Stay with me." Her voice sharp and urgent as she pressed her hands against my chest, where my body lay still. My arms limp at my sides, my head tilted against the broken window. But I wasn't in that body anymore. I was light and free, floating above the chaos, weightless, in a strange, clear stillness. Everything looked sharper than it ever had before, the raindrops glinting like tiny stars, the wet pavement shining under the lights. the faint hum of life, pulsing all around me. Then I saw her, my mother, who'd passed away 10 years ago, from a stroke standing there by the wreck, her green coat bright and crisp against the stormy grey. She didn't speak, just stood there looking at me with eyes full of calm and love, steady as a rock, and in that moment I knew I was dead gone from the life I'd known, but wrapped in peace. That peace I felt floating above the wreck didn't just hold me still. It grew deeper and wider until something new broke through the quiet. A light came, not like the ambulance flashes or the van's glaring beams that had blinded me before the crash, but something alive and warm like the glow of a fire on a cold night. It didn't come from one spot or shine in a single direction. It was everywhere at once, all around me, and somehow inside me too, pulling me toward it with a gentle, steady tug I couldn't fight. It felt like coming home after years of wandering, lost in the dark. As I moved closer, that warmth swelled into something bigger, a love so thick and real. It filled every corner of me. Every crack I didn't know was empty guilt and doubt. I'd carried it all melted away under that light. Then a voice spoke clear and strong. "Carol, come," and I knew it was him, Jesus, right away, deep in my soul. Like I'd always known that voice, even though I'd never heard it before, in all my life. That knowing hit me hard, and I wasn't just drifting anymore. I was pulled toward him, fast and sure, with a force I couldn't resist, even if I tried. The light grew brighter, and I saw him standing there. Jesus, his face, vast eyes, timeless. His robes weren't cloth, but light itself woven into something alive, glowing soft and fierce, all at the same time. I sank to my knees, not because I had to, but because my soul alone knew. Him knew. This was the one who'd made me, who'd held me, even when I didn't know it, every piece of me, singing out to him in awe. He spoke again. Carol, rise, his voice steady and deep like a river running through stone. And I stood trembling before him, my spirit bare and open, his love pouring over me like a wave I couldn't hold back. But in his eyes, I saw something else too, a sorrow so heavy, it didn't fit with the light around him. A sadness I couldn't place that made me wonder what could weigh on him. That sorrow in his eyes lingered as I stood before him, and I wanted to ask why. But before I could find the words, he reached out his hand, steady and warm, and touched mine. A flood hit me then like a wave crashing over my soul, and I saw the world not the one I'd left behind on Pine Road, with its rain and wrecked cars, but the real world as he saw it. It was raw and heavy, a place where pain stretched out like a dark cloud over cities I'd never walked through. People moved below, going about their days, shopping, working, arguing, laughing, all of it so normal on the surface, but there was something else, a shadow twisting around them, pulling strings they couldn't feel. It wasn't just chaos or chance, it was a deception. Alive and moving, splitting people apart from each other with lies they couldn't see. I watched families turn on themselves, neighbors draw lines between their homes, all of it fueled by something dark and unseen. Tears burned my eyes as I saw it play out, and I whispered, "Lord, what is this all about?" Jesus looked at me, his face soft but heavy with that same sorrow. "Come, Carol," he said, calm and sure. He said, "Come, Carol," and the light around us shifted fast, pulling me forward into a tunnel that wasn't just bright, but alive with a hum I could feel in my bones. It didn't feel like moving through space. It felt like the space moved through me, warm and pulsing like a heartbeat. I heard music then, not the gospel tunes from my radio on Pine Road, but something pure and strong voices weaving together in a harmony so deep it shook me to my core. Words I didn't know but somehow understood in my soul. The walls of that tunnel weren't still. They shimmered and moved, showing me flashes of my own life, but not how I remembered it, how Jesus saw it through his eyes. I saw myself at 10 sitting alone on the front steps after Dad walked out on us. I'd felt so small and forgotten that day, but now I saw figures of light standing close beside me, tall and steady, watching over me when I thought I was all by myself, and later acts of kindness glowed too. I saw me at 35, praying in the dark for Lily, when she had that fever that wouldn't break my voice, shaking, as I asked God to hold her tight. She never knew I did that, but it shone here like a star. Each choice wove into something eternal. Tears streamed down my face hot and fast as I watched it all, Lord. I didn't know I whispered, my voice breaking under the weight of it. Jesus stood beside me, his presence calm and sure, a faint smile on his face, but his eyes firm. Every choice matters, Carol. He said every thought, every word, every step you take carries. Jesus said every choice matters, and the tunnel flickered, shifting me into a new vision. I stood in a city unlike any I'd known. Tall buildings gleamed with glass, and steel streets buzzed with people moving fast. At first it seemed normal folks walking carrying bags, kids trailing behind. But then I noticed the silence. No one spoke. No voices rose above the hum of footsteps. Their eyes were fixed on faint glowing dots under their skin, small lights pulsing blue on their wrists. They waved hands over invisible screens, buying bread, unlocking doors. No cash, no cards, just those dots. A woman handed her child a toy from a stall with a flick of her wrist. Families sat at tables eating spoons, clinking against bowls. But their faces stayed blank eyes, staring ahead like they were listening to something I couldn't hear. My chest tightened as I watched. This wasn't just quiet. It was control, slipping into their lives unnoticed. I turned to Jesus standing beside me, his presence steady, but his gaze heavy. "What is this?" I asked, my voice shaking with a mix of wonder and dread. He looked at me, his face carved with grief. "This is what comes next, Carol," he said, his voice low and firm. A world where they trade their voices for ease, their will for control. They don't see yet. I stared at the people below their blank eyes, glowing wrists, and felt a chill crawl up my spine. This wasn't freedom. It was chains they didn't know they wore yet. That vision of a chained world faded as Jesus stood beside me, his voice echoing, "They don't see yet," and I felt the weight of his grief pull me deeper. Suddenly, the light shifted again, and I was in a place beyond words, not a city or a tunnel, but a space alive with something holy. The air buzzed with a power I couldn't name, thick with a scent like fresh rain and flowers woven into peace. No sun hung above, yet light poured from everywhere, bright and clear, flowing from him. Jesus stepped forward and I saw him fully. His face fierce with kind strength, eyes deep with wise love. His robes shimmered, light woven tight, pulsing with life. I fell to my knees, my soul bending before him, not forced, but drawn by who he was. "Rise, Carol," he said, his voice steady and deep. "I have more to show you." I stood trembling as he touched me again, and my sight changed. I saw the world through his eyes, not just streets and faces, but a spiritual truth. Cities lay under a dark mist, creeping into lives. Most people didn't see it. They walked through it, blind, living their days, as if nothing was wrong. But I saw it clear. A force not of air but of shadow, alive and creeping, twisting their lives with every step. Then I saw those glowing dots again under their skin, small and blue, not just tools, but chains binding them to that mist. I saw people tapping their wrists to buy food, to open gates, to live their lives, all while that shadow tightened its grip. Pastors stood in pulpits praising these dots as blessings, tools of progress sent from above. And people nodded, took them with smiles, not seeing the weight they carried. My heart pounded as I watched this Lord. How can they not see it? I asked, my voice shaking. Jesus shook his head slow and firm. They don't ask me, Carol. He said they trust what they're told over what I show them. I stared at the mist, the dots, the blind smiles, and felt a chill. This wasn't just a tool. It was a trap they walked into with open hands. Jesus watched me, his sorrow now, mine too. This is the deception, Carol. He said a lie they live and don't even know they're caught in. Jesus said this is the deception and the vision of that mist-covered world, twisted again, pulling me into a new sight. I saw people every shade of skin moving through life, split by lines they didn't draw. Black folks carried pain heavy as stone anger, burning deep scars, handed down through years, some not even knowing why it burned. White folks walked with shame etched in their steps, guilt they couldn't shake, confusion clouding their eyes as they tried to find their place. I saw them clash words, sharp as knives, walls rising between them higher with every shout. Then Jesus spoke, his voice cutting through. Look, Carol, they are not each other's enemies. The truth hit me like a slap. This split wasn't natural, it was built. I saw shadows whispering lies into their ears, dark shapes weaving through the mist, feeding the divide. To black folks, they hissed, "You're less." They'll never see you hold that anger tight, don't let it go. To white folks, they murmured, "You're to blame for it all. Your guilt is your birthright. You'll never fix it." Both sides swallowed those lies whole, believing the fight was theirs alone. Jesus turned to me, his voice firm, with love. The enemy spins this web to blind them. Carol, I came to break it free. There's no black, no white only. My children all caught in this trap. Tears filled my eyes as I saw the chains not on their wrists, but in their minds forged by those whispers. It wasn't about skin, it was about control, keeping them apart so they'd never see the real fight above them. I understood his sorrow now. They battled each other blind to the hands pulling the strings. Lord, how did this happen? I whispered, my chest tight. Jesus looked at me, his eyes blazing. They've forgotten who they are. He said the enemy took their truth and twisted it into this lie. My soul shook. This was why he grieved they were his lost in a fight. Jesus said they've forgotten who they are, and I felt that truth sink into me heavy as stone. The vision of that divided world fading as a new sight took its place. I stood in a vast hall, endless and glowing, filled with beings of light, not flesh but souls, radiant and pure, waiting to be born. Jesus stood beside me, his voice calm. These are the ones yet to come. Carol, each with a purpose I gave them, each with gifts to carry my light. I watched them glimmer full of hope and promise, but then the vision shifted, and I saw them step into the world. Their light dimmed as shadows swarmed around them, whispering lies from the moment they took their first breath. Some landed in homes where love held them close, guiding them toward their purpose with steady hands and warm words. But others fell into places broken by pain, hunger, or anger, where those shadows grew thick, drowning their light with every step. I saw kids taught their worth was tied to what they owned or how they looked, not who they were meant to be. I saw the enemy at work, a system of lies built to steal their truth, twisting their paths before they could even walk straight. My heart broke as I watched them stumble. Lord, how do we stop this? I asked, my voice cracking under the weight. Jesus took my hands, his grip firm. Tell them who they are, Carol. He said, tell them why I made them. Tell them I haven't let them go. Then the vision changed and I saw hope break through. Small lights flared in the dark, people standing firm against those shadows, their faces alive with something stronger. Teachers spoke truth. Parents held firm workers, shared kindness. Each light pushed back the dark, breaking chains I hadn't seen snap before. "These are my warriors," Jesus said. His voice steady, they carried truth, not with swords, but with their lives. The enemy can't stop them because truth cuts deeper than any lie. I watched those lights grow bright against the shadows, and my heart lifted. They were small, but fierce, ordinary folks like me, holding something eternal. "Lord, how do we bring them back?" I asked, tears still wet on my face. Jesus held my hands tighter. "Tell them their purpose," he said. "Tell them they're mine." And I saw those warriors shine brighter, their truth a fire. The shadows couldn't touch hope, rising where I'd seen only loss. "I have to go back, don't I?" I said, my voice steady now. Jesus nodded. "Yes, Carol, but there's more to see." Jesus nodded. "Yes, Carol, but there's more to see." And the light around us flared, pulling me into one last vision. I stood in a city vast and cold. Steel towers loomed. Screens glowed. Drones buzzed. Thousands moved through them, silent and steady, their steps in perfect lines like ants, marching to a beat I couldn't hear. Their faces were blank eyes locked on streams of light flickering in the air, blue dots pulsing under their skin, guiding every move. No one laughed or questioned, just moved, like machines wrapped in flesh. Above the city, a giant face loomed on screens, a man with a smooth voice and a smile too perfect, promising peace, safety, unity for all. People looked up at him, their eyes wide with trust, nodding as he spoke his words, sinking deep. Jesus stood beside me, his voice low. "This is the one they'll follow. Carol, the one they'll trust. But they won't see the chains he weaves until it's too late." I watched as people gave up their voices, their choices, trading them for promises of ease, every tap of their wrist, a step deeper into his grip. Then I saw lines forming, long and endless people stepping forward one by one to take something. At first, it was too far to tell. But as I drifted closer, my stomach dropped. They were getting those blue dots implanted under their skin upgrades. They called them smiling as needles pressed in. "Lord, is this the mark?" I whispered, my voice tight. Jesus shook his head. "Not yet, Carol," he said, "but this is the path to it first. They make it easy, then they make it needed, then they make it forever." I watched the lines grow, people stepping up with eager hands, not seeing the trap closing around them. My heart pounded. "Lord, how do we stop this?" I asked, my throat dry. Jesus looked at me, his voice steady. "Some will hear you, Carol, some won't. But those who know my voice will not be lost. Warn them before the choice is gone." Then the city vanished, and I stood in a wide field, the air still and quiet. Jesus beside me looking out over the horizon. "They've lost their way." He said they think they're free, but they're bound by what they choose. I gave them the greatest gift of all, but so many pick chains instead. I looked at him, tears falling. "But they don't know Lord. How can they choose if they're blind?" He turned to me, his eyes firm. "That's why you must speak, Carol. The truth must be louder than the lie." Then I saw two paths split before me, one wide and smooth, people flowing down it, easy and fast, but swallowed by dark at its end. The other was narrow, rough with stones and thorns. Few walked it, but light shone at its end, Jesus waiting there. "Most take the easy way, Carol." He said, "It asks nothing of them but those who seek me. Choose the hard path, and I lead them home." I stared at those paths, my soul trembling. "What do I do?" I asked. "Tell them, Carol," he said. Jesus said, "Tell them, Carol." And the field blurred, the light pulling back fast. I felt a jolt, sharp and heavy, like falling into something tight. Pain rushed in my chest, burned, my arms ached, a loud beep stabbed my ears. I gasped, air flooding my lungs, harsh and cold. My eyes snapped open to white walls and bright lights. I was back in a hospital room, the steady beep of machines pounding in my head. I saw Lily, my daughter, beside me, her eyes wide with tears. "Mom, you're awake," she cried, her voice shaking as she gripped my hand. My son Ben stood behind her, his face pale, hands shoved in his pockets, staring like he couldn't believe it. A nurse hovered near the bed, checking a clipboard, her voice low. She shouldn't be here, that crash was too bad. I felt my body again, heavy and stiff like a cage I'd been stuffed back into after being free. The visions flooded my mind, the mist, the dots, the paths, Jesus, his voice tell them. I tried to sit up, but pain shot through me, pinning me down. Lily squeezed my hand tighter. I looked at her, her brown eyes wet and wide, then at Ben, his jaw tight, and I knew. I wasn't here just for me. I have to tell them. I croaked, my throat raw. Lily leaned closer. "Tell us what, Mom?" Her voice soft, but urgent. Ben stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "What happened out there?" I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. My tongue stuck to the roof. I closed my eyes, the weight of it all, pressing down the city, the chains, the paths, the truth. Jesus showed me I wasn't meant to keep it locked inside. Lord, give me strength. I prayed, silent and fierce, my chest tight, with the need to speak. I opened my eyes again, Lily still holding my hand. Ben leaning in, and I saw them clear. They didn't know the war, raging beyond these walls, the shadows creeping closer every day. I have to tell them. I whispered, my voice weak, but alive. Lily nodded, her grip firm. "We're here, Mom," she said. Ben swallowed hard, his eyes locked on mine. I knew this was why I'd come back. Not for me, but for them, for all of them. Back in my body, the hospital room felt like a cage, but the need to speak burned stronger than the pain. I told Lily and Ben first, my voice weak. "I saw Jesus," I said. "He showed me a world, trapped in lies." Lily frowned. "Mom, you hit your head hard." Ben nodded. "Maybe it's the meds talking." I shook my head. "No, it's real." But their eyes stayed soft with doubt. Days passed, my strength crept back, and I tried again. I told my sister Jane over lukewarm coffee in the cafeteria about the mist, the chains, the truth. She patted my arm. "You've been through a lot." "Carol, rest up," I told my pastor when he visited, his Bible tucked under his arm. He smiled gentle. "These experiences are powerful, but don't stir up fear. Carol, focus on healing." I felt alone, the weight of what I'd seen pressing hard against their soft doubt, but I couldn't stay quiet. Jesus had warned me some wouldn't hear. Then I noticed it on the TV above my bed, a news clip about wrist chips for payments tested in some city far off, people smiling as they tapped to buy coffee. A chill ran through me. It was starting, the dots from my vision creeping in. I kept talking to anyone who'd listen. Nurses in the hall, the janitor mopping the floor, my neighbor when she dropped off soup. Some brushed me off with tight smiles. Others paused, eyes sharp. I've felt it too. One said something's off out there. I nodded. The nurse had left the TV on another story about digital IDs rolling out soon. Sleek and easy, they said. My chest tightened. It matched what I'd seen. I wasn't alone. Others sensed the shift too. They just needed words to name it. I kept pushing. The truth felt too big to hold. Some heard, some didn't. If you're hearing this, it's no accident. I'm Carol, and I died, saw Jesus, and came back with this truth for you. He showed me a world drowning in lies, chains disguised as ease, and I can't keep it quiet. This isn't a story to scare you. It's a warning to wake you up. The deception is here now, slipping in through glowing dots and smooth promises. It won't come loud with shackles. It'll creep in soft with comfort you'll want at first. It'll feel good until it's required, too late to escape. Jesus showed me two paths, one wide and smooth, leading to dark, the other narrow rough, but lit with him. Most won't take the hard road, it's too steep, too lonely, but that's where he waits. I beg you, listen now. Look around, the signs are here. Wrist chips, digital promises, they're starting already. Don't wait until it's forced, until the choice is gone. Pray hard, ask for eyes to see, a heart to know. Build your faith now, before the shadows close in. Jesus told me his own will hear him, even in the dark. His light will cut through, but you have to choose it. You have to pick him, even when it's hard, when they call you crazy, when the world laughs in your face. The easy path leads to change, the hard one to him. I've seen the end of both, and I'm telling you now, choose the light. Your soul is what matters, nothing else will last. Jesus has won this fight already. The enemy can't take that away, but you have to stand with him. I've done my part, laid it bare for you. This is your choice now. Will you hear him? Will you walk that narrow road? Or will you wait until the shadows lock you in? I'm begging you, choose now. I've spoken.